out who is making Top Cut. We do have our final featured match, for now at least, during this round 7, ready to go. It's going to be Wolfe again on stream, making his 4th appearance.
Checking in with the champ.
Checking in with the champ, facing off against Eduardo Cunha.
Yeah, from Portugal as well, so an international matchup. Both these players actually doing fantastically in last year's World Championships, both making the top 4 there. So
only one of these players will be able to advance, though. Both of their records right now are with 4 wins and 2 losses, which means whoever wins this game will move on. So no top 4 rematch for these two this time around. It's right here, right now.
Unfortunately not, but Wolfe and Edu both working together in an online tournament, a team-based tournament that was actually put together by the community. They actually worked together on the same team in that, so there's kind of a familiarity between the players. And I know that Wolfe's team has been displayed a little bit throughout this tournament. He's one of those players that made some adaptations coming into this day, so his team was kind of a work in progress, a living, breathing work in progress team. And in that vein, you know, Edu's team is really interesting because talking to him briefly earlier, I had the pleasure of having a brief chat with him between games. Basically, what he had was a team that was really, really solid, that he's been playing all year and just improving it. But coming into the back end of the season, he felt really good, actually, about the team, about the setup of the team. With that in mind, you have to ask yourself, does Wolfe know this team inside and out? And if he does, can Edu play it a little bit differently to try and catch him off guard?
It's tough to say. I'm really excited to, see Eduardo here. Being able to use the same team throughout the year certainly shows a lot of confidence, I think, going into this tournament, especially when you run the risk of facing somebody you worked so closely with throughout the year. We have these teams on screen, so Wolfe, again, if you're just tuning in for the first time, maybe you missed his matches earlier today, is running a team of Snorlax, Tapu Fini, Arcanine, Togedemaru, Mimikyu, and Kartana versus Eduardo's team of Arcanine, Tapu Koko, Kartana, Tapu Fini, Porygon 2, and Mudsdale.
Yeah, well, with that team on Edu's side of the field, the one thing I want to bring to the attention is the Mudsdale. It's actually a very kind of personal choice for him, something that he picked up on earlier in the season and believed it to be very, very good. I was just talking about how Porygon 2 seemed a little bit underrepresented at these top tables, but here we have one, and in this team, it's really important for Eduardo to make sure that the Porygon 2 gets things set up, of course, for that Mudsdale. Now, against Wolfe's team, the Mimikyu has the option to try and reverse the Trick Room, and of course, Snorlax probably doesn't mind having Trick Room set up for him if he has that option, so I'll be curious to see if Edu plays his team with the Mudsdale, or if he goes without it. Even though it could be an interesting matchup, it would do very well against the Togedemaru, of course, due to the ground typing, pretty well against the Arcanine, fairly solid against Snorlax, because I know that Mudsdale has access to close combat, but in the same vein, Tapu Fini's really going to help keep that Mudsdale at home. And of course, Kartana's probably going to force it away a little bit.
Kartana, Tapu Koko lead from Eduardo against Wolfe's lead of Arcanine and that Tapu Fini.
Yeah, very smart play from both players to probably keep it a little bit safe, and some of their more niche Pokemon changing it up. The one thing I do like in Wolfe's lead here is the Tapu Fini coming in and changing the terrain, so even if he has to switch it out, that Tapu Koko isn't going to be getting the benefit of the electric terrain to boost its electric type attacks. Arcanine's Intimidate, pretty useful here as well with that Kartana in play, meaning that those Leaf Blades, those Sacred Swords aren't going to be doing as much damage. So something like Tapu Fini might consider trying to stick around, maybe not switching out in place of trying to get a little bit of damage down. But the likelihood is Wolfe's in a position where he can switch that out and bring in something a little more favorable. Now what Eduardo's going to have to do is try and capitalize on that. Make sure he gets something out of this turn. And knowing that terrain's not in play, that's something that is clearly very important to him.
Eduardo sending out his own Tapu Fini for that Tapu Koko so it can come back and bring back the electric terrain as Kartana uses Detect to protect itself this turn. Muddy Water from Wolfe's Tapu Fini will connect with Eduardo's Tapu Fini. It's not going to do a lot of damage thanks to the resistance, but it does get a critical hit. No accuracy drop. Arcanine Flare Blitz into that detecting Kartana.
Well, a pretty safe turn, I think, from both players. Getting the Tapu Fini in for Eduardo is absolutely huge here because the Kartana will put pressure down on the Tapu Fini slot. And of course, Tapu Fini on his side will put pressure down on the Arcanine slot. So a very kind of simple breakdown on what he's threatening on both sides of the field here. Taking a little bit of damage on his Tapu Fini, but not all that much. That damage is with a critical hit as well.
Tapu Fini leaving the field from Wolfe, sending in his own Kartana to take its place. Arcanine protecting this turn, so Wolfe playing very defensively, trying to position himself so he's better off moving forward, but Eduardo capitalizing on that perfectly. Substitute from the Kartana, Tapu Fini with a Scald into the protecting Arcanine.
And I think that's something that Eduardo needed to do. We saw Wolfe do it in an earlier round. A really smart use of Substitute helped him get out of a slightly tighter situation. And Eduardo, knowing that Tapu Fini is going to be leaving the field because it wasn't really too valuable, managing to set up the Substitute. That means the Arcanine, even if it sticks around to try and take the Scald and retaliate with a Flare Blitz, isn't going to be getting a knockout on Eduardo's. Well, the Kartana on Wolfe's side is coming in to threaten Tapu Fini, but Eduardo's Kartana has a little bit of breathing room to maybe try and get a couple of Sacred Swords in there.
Tapu Fini leaving the field on Eduardo's side, Arcanine taking its place, going to threaten that Kartana as well as intimidate it, lowering its attack stat and lowering how much damage it could use with a move like Leaf Blade. Detect from Eduardo's Kartana, so protecting that Substitute, not ready to lose it quite yet, as Wolfe goes for the first Z move of the game.
Yes, it's going to be Bloom Doom from Wolfe's Kartana. We touched on the use of Grassinium Z before this, and this could be a big attack that he was looking to send towards that Tapu Fini that was on the field at the beginning of the turn for Eduardo. The big damage coming up, but I don't think it's going to be doing anywhere near as much to that Arcanine. So after the Intimidate, and of course the resisted type, even though it does about 40% and from a not very effective attack, that's the Z move from Wolfe, A, revealed, and B, not maximized.
Not maximized at all. Arcanine left attacking into that Kartana, and Wolfe and Eduardo really kind of stuck at a mirror right now.
Yeah, they've got slightly different sets, I think, between the two of them. We haven't seen the reveal, of course, on Eduardo's Kartana, but you do have to wonder if it's going to be the same kind of thing. They do play and team build together, so they probably know a little bit about this, especially because Eduardo's playing a variety of a team he's been playing all year. But the mirror is certainly helpful when your opponent's already revealed their Z move and not gotten any value out of it. Arcanine was the perfect switch in there for Eduardo, making sure that Bloom Doom didn't do as much, and I don't think Wolfe quite respected it enough.
Kartana with the Detect this turn on Wolfe's side of the field as the opposing Kartana goes for a Sacred Sword, not attacking Kartana, instead attacking the Arcanine, going to start dealing damage to it. Flare Blitz from Eduardo's Arcanine into the Kartana, and Arcanine Flare Blitz finally going to connect with something. In this case, it's going to break that Kartana's Substitute.
Yeah, getting rid of that Substitute is really, really helpful, because then it means that Wolfe can start going after the Kartana with his own Kartana. He can try and get it with something like a Sacred Sword, and that is going to be a bit of a stretch, but it's certainly not out the realm of possibility. Getting rid of Substitute was so, so important there. And of course, we see with Eduardo's Arcanine just attacking into a Detect, that's almost a wasted turn for it. That's something that both players will need to make sure if they want to get an advantage in this mirror, they're making the right predictions on what's protecting, what's keeping it safe.
Tapu Koko taking the field for the Arcanine on Eduardo's side of the field, getting rid of the Misty terrain and bringing back that electric terrain to boost its electric type moves. And we get our second Bloom Doom of the game from Eduardo and his Kartana.
Yeah, his Kartana also carrying the Grassinium Z, but neither of the targets on the field really premium targets, I'd say, for the Grass type Z move. Obviously, we saw it didn't do too much to Arcanine when it came out from Wolfe's side of the field, but in this case, it's heading towards Kartana on Wolfe's side of the field. And again, another Z move just not doing enough. Even with a critical hit.
Even with that critical hit, it won't stop the Kartana on Wolfe's side of the field from using a substitute of its own, as Arcanine with the Flare Blitz. If this connects with that Kartana, it'll definitely, certainly knock it out.
Yeah, really easy knockout there. And Wolfe getting the substitute up for himself. Now he's the one with the Kartana kept safe. And that's going to be really, really important, especially because Eduardo is now down a Pokemon. We did see the Kartanas matching up, and you have to wonder why the switch out on the Arcanine. Getting that Tapu Koko in, admittedly, is nice, but now the Intimidate, when he brings it back in, isn't even that valuable because it doesn't get Kartana behind the substitute. The substitute not phased by the scary face of Arcanine at all.
Intimidating Wolfe's Arcanine, though, could help it a little bit, but if anything, if I were Wolfe, you know, maybe it's time for Arcanine to leave the field and save that Intimidate of its own to try and keep Kartana around for just a little bit longer.
Kartana's in a great position here, though. The substitute up is going to keep it around for at least one more hit, so you're going to have to get rid of that. And we've seen from these players smart play to try and get this in. An interesting switch from Wolfe, which Eduardo appears to have fallen for. The Thunderbolt redirected right there.
Leaf Blade from that Kartana into the Tapu Koko to bring it down to just below half of its health. And Arcanine on Eduardo's side of the field with the Flare Blitz going to crash into the Kartana to break the substitute. A great switch from Wolfe there.
Well, I think what we saw Eduardo trying to do there was double into that Kartana, break the substitute, and knock it out with Flare Blitz. And Wolfe forced to reveal the Togedemaru. But if you're forced to reveal it and you get an advantage out of it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. The Togedemaru is going to have the option to fake out, and after that start zing-zapping in electric terrain, so I'm pretty sure Kartana, even though it's probably a little bit worried about the Arcanine, Togedemaru can keep it in check for at least one, if not more turns.
Togedemaru more than happy to stick around, but Kartana leaving the field for Wolfe. Arcanine taking its place, bringing back that Intimidate to lower the attack stat of Eduardo's Arcanine. Going to lessen the amount of damage Flare Blitz can do to that Togedemaru, which could be important, but Eduardo switching out his Arcanine to bring the Tapu Fini onto the field. So no longer will Tapu Koko or Togedemaru be able to benefit from the electric terrain. Instead, it's going to be the misty terrain. Spiky Shield from the Togedemaru, so no fake out, no flinching from Wolfe this turn. Instead, Tapu Koko on Eduardo's side of the field left to use Dazzling Gleam to attack into the Arcanine.
I think this is a really, really smart play from Wolfe because, as you can see in this turn, it started to pay off on a number of levels. Not only is Togedemaru able to stick around and keeping itself on the field even longer with the Spiky Shield, but he's forcing Eduardo into using certain moves. If you can't use your Electric-type attacks on Tapu Koko, you're kind of stuck using something suboptimal like Dazzling Gleam. The switch to Arcanine, obviously a resisting type because of the fire typing, really, really helpful there. And with that information in mind, I think Wolfe's going to be able to capitalize on it.
We will have to see if Wolfe is able to capitalize on it. First, though, switching out his Arcanine for his own Tapu Fini. So definitely something to threaten that Arcanine and to not worry as much about the Tapu Fini on Eduardo's side of the field. Zing Zap into the Tapu Fini, and Tapu Fini on Eduardo's side of the field revealing that it has Light Screen.
That Light Screen is going to be really, really helpful against Wolfe's Tapu Fini of his own. It doesn't help so much against Pokemon such as the Arcanine or the Kartana, but clearly the Tapu Fini is something he's respecting and maybe trying to keep his Arcanine around a little bit longer, being able to eat up these Water-type attacks from Wolfe's Tapu Fini. If it can stick around, then it can start dealing damage to things such as Togedemaru, maybe be around on the field when Kartana's in play. All of that really, really important. So I think Eduardo really setting up Light Screen just to try and beat the Tapu Fini.
But Wolfe is one step ahead with his Togedemaru and Encore locking that Tapu Fini into using Light Screen for the next 5 turns. Arcanine with the Snarl will further boost Eduardo's defenses, lowering the special attack stat of the Tapu Fini and the Togedemaru on the field. Scald, even with the lowered special attack, even with that Light Screen, thanks to the choice specs, is still able to bring Arcanine down into the red so that it has to consume its Mago Berry and go back up to about 75% of its health.
Well, I think here, even though he's not taking knockouts, I feel like Wolfe's in the driving seat for this game, because now Togedemaru's Encore Tapu Fini, then he's literally forcing a certain play from Edu. He can't afford to leave Tapu Fini in there just failing Light Screen every single time. And the Arcanine on Edu's side of the field, probably a really obvious target for both the Pokemon on Wolfe's side. You know, Togedemaru can get some good damage down on it with the Zing Zap. That will help potentially even flinch it. And then, of course, Tapu Fini can follow it with another Scald. The berry's gone, and that's going to help. If he's gone for Zing Zap, it's going to be even stronger this turn.
Tapu Koko taking the place of the Tapu Fini and Arcanine protecting on Eduardo's side of the field. Togedemaru going for a second Encore onto the Arcanine, and Tapu Fini left scalding into the Tapu Koko switch-in.
They were making very, very smart plays, falling a little bit short of the damage and not getting the burn. But now the onus is on Tapu Koko to start dealing damage. There's one problem with that. It can't deal the damage it wants to deal, those Thunderbolts, those Volt Switches, while Togedemaru is on the field. So Tapu Fini probably feeling pretty safe, even though its special attack stat was lowered, of course, by that Snarl earlier from Arcanine. It's still in a great position to start putting damage back down.
Tapu Fini taking the place of that Tapu Koko on Eduardo's side of the field, and Wolfe's Tapu Fini switching out as well. Not content to stick around with that Snarl and with that light screen still in play. Instead, the Arcanine taking its place to lower the physical attack of the opposing Arcanine. Togedemaru able to encore the Arcanine into Protect as well this turn.
Well, this Encore coming in again. Arcanine failing his Protect. That's really, really important. So it means that if he leaves Arcanine in, it's guaranteed to actually be protecting. But Togedemaru can actually just start zing-zapping that slot on the right. Tapu Fini stays in, it's going to take some super effective damage. And if Tapu Koko comes in, it's going to get knocked out because it has so low damage. So this Encore is going to be so important for Wolfe, knowing exactly what his opponent's doing every single turn.
Helping hand from Wolfe's Arcanine, ready to help the Togedemaru out with its Zing Zap as Eduardo's Arcanine protects itself this turn. Zing Zap will connect with the Tapu Fini on Eduardo's side of the field, and thanks to the help of the Helping Hand, it's enough to knock it out.
Yeah, that's exactly what he needed. That Arcanine isn't able to do much at all. It's going to be forced to keep on trying to protect, and the Tapu Koko on Eduardo's side is going to be forced in with a minimal amount of health, 1 or 2 at most. If there is the extreme speed from Wolfe's Arcanine, he will be able to pick that up before it even gets a chance to move and retaliate, potentially looking to knock out Wolfe's Arcanine. And the Arcanine on Edu's side is still stuck in Protect, so there's no real way out for him in this game. Very, very smart play with the substitutes and the Encore, I think, from Wolfe. And this is one of those games where he really gets in his opponent's head.
And this is what Encore is perfect for, being able to force your opponent to waste turns using a move such as Protect that won't really help them out offensively, while you slowly whittle away at their health with moves like Zing Zap. Is just a great sort of combination of how to play the game.
It is, and that's something that Wolfe's been particularly good at, is holding onto a board position and forcing his opponents to play a certain way. It's a really big ask for many, many players, but overall, it's certainly an interesting one. We do see the Helping Hand, though.
Helping Hand from Arcanine into the Togedemaru. Eduardo not wanting to get locked into Protect for yet another few turns, going immediately for the extreme speed onto the opposing Arcanine and activating Arcanine's Pinch Berry. Dazzling Gleam from the Tapu Koko is not very effective, and Tapu Koko actually knocks itself out with its own Life Orb damage. So one Zing Zap here with that Helping Hand could be enough to knock, and you're playing this game of not so much can I knock this Pokemon out, but can I limit my opponent's options so I know what they're likely to do next. You can see how easy it is for things to just come together and, okay, now I know my opponent's Arcanine can only Protect this turn. We know that Protect succeeded last turn, which means it may fail this turn. It just sort of eases the prediction difficulty that you have to make.
Yeah, and while we have the teams up on the screen, with the power that Togedemaru really gave Wolfe to control the game, you have to look over at Eduardo's team and see what he has in there. That Mudsdale looks mighty tempting because of that fantastic ground typing that would help it out. But there's so many terrifying threats on Wolfe's team that he probably doesn't want to be bringing that Mudsdale again. So if he brings it, he's going to have to clear the way for it. And that's going to be such a big ask against a team like Wolves.
Yeah, having to go through potentially that Tapu Fini, potentially that Kartana, just so Mudsdale has a shot of bringing Eduardo into Game 3 here and keeping his World's Dream alive. Wolfe leading Mimikyu and Snorlax against Eduardo's lead of that Kartana and Arcanine.
Well, this is something Wolfe's done in his previous rounds after winning Game 1, getting a good feel for his opponent's team. If he feels it's appropriate, the Mimikyu and Snorlax together are coming out, and he then probably just goes for a very linear kind of setup path. You have to wonder, what answers does Eduardo have to this? Of course, there's a potential for a lot of damage from this Kartana, both Bloom Dooming and getting Sacred Swords down on Snorlax, but you can't leave Mimikyu unchecked. It's not something that you can ignore, and if the Snorlax gets set up in the same fashion it has done in previous games, he could be in a fantastic position. The Disguise here is going to draw so much attention if you don't want Trick Room to go up, and that's something that you can't afford to do with the potential belly drumming Snorlax. I think this plays back to what we saw in Game 1. Without the Mudsdale in play, all of Eduardo's Pokemon were pretty pacey. So he left the Mudsdale and Porygon 2 on the bench, and that's something I'm interested to see if it affects this game.
Snorlax with the Protect, Arcanine with the Extreme Speed, targeting down that Snorlax, and Kartana going immediately for the Bloom Doom. If Eduardo went for the knockout on Snorlax right off the bat, this could be a very costly play for him.
Wolfe really reading his opponent in Eduardo well here, protecting Snorlax where many players would of course go for something like the belly drum on turn 1. But that Snorlax is such a threat to Eduardo that he's decided he wants to double target it, and a super smart protect there from Wolfe to keep it safe and taking absolutely minimal damage from a Z move being used. That opens the door for Mimikyu to set up this Trick Room, and Snorlax can really get going here. Of course, he does have to worry about a potential Sacred Sword from Kartana, but Mimikyu could probably start to deal some damage of its own here.
Mimikyu could also potentially, either start doing damage of its own, maybe even psych up. We've seen it in the past from other trainers throughout this tournament. But for now, Snorlax happy to start this turn off with a belly drum to maximize its attack and to immediately consume that berry in a pinch to get most of its health right back. Arcanine with the Flare Blitz going to underspeed the Mimikyu in Trick Room and attack that Snorlax for a nice amount of damage, leaving it at just half of its health. And Mimikyu using a Z move of its own. It's holding a Ghostium Z Crystal, but will it be the Never-Ending Nightmare or will it be something else?
I really feel like if you're in Wolfe's shoes here, you want to be completely going for damage, and Never-Ending Nightmare is the correct selection here. That Kartana is going to be the target, and that's probably the thing he wants to remove from play here. Knowing it doesn't have a Focus Sash means if he can do enough damage just like he did, then that Snorlax is safe. One of the biggest threats to his Snorlax has been taken out, and Wolfe, after seeing the team selection from Edu in the first game, capitalizing on that. There is one adaptation, though, that he may or may not have been expecting.
Mudsdale taking the field for the Fallen Kartana. Mudsdale known to be a very slow Pokemon. Again, like you said, having access to close combat and using that stamina ability to just boost its defenses as it faces down these Pokemon.
The problem is with stamina is, yes, it does boost your defenses, but it doesn't boost them as quickly as something like a belly drum. Now, the Snorlax is already at its maximum health, maximum attack, and only half health. Mudsdale revealing close combat immediately.
Flare Blitz from that Arcanine targeting down the Mimikyu and not the Snorlax, so Mimikyu's disguise unfortunately will be busted. Mimikyu worked so hard on that costume. Hopefully, it can repair it for the next round. Taunt from the Mimikyu into the Mudsdale. Very interesting play there.
Well, I think the big thing with the taunt there is actually stopping it from protecting the following turn. It's not like it's trying to stop a setup move coming out from Mudsdale, but what he wants to know is that if his Snorlax attacks that position, he's guaranteed to deal damage. So he's either going to get the free chance to attack Mudsdale before it goes and retaliates with a close combat, he doesn't get caught short by a protect, or he basically ends up catching something on the switch in, which is something you really don't want to do. This is another Pokemon, similar to how he played with the Togedemaru in Game 1. The Mimikyu forcing his opponent's hand a little bit, and this Arcanine coming in is going to make this even easier for Wolfe.
The Intimidate from Arcanine weakening the attack of that Mudsdale and the opposing Arcanine. Snorlax with the Frustration going for the knockout on Mudsdale, and thanks to that belly drum and probably not a little help from that crit, is able to knock it out in one shot. Arcanine with the Flare Blitz going to crash into that Snorlax, won't deal enough damage to knock it out.
No, it really doesn't, and we see the Snorlax here in a pretty solid position. The only threats to Snorlax have been taken off the field. And that's just super smart play from Wolfe, identifying at team preview alone exactly what he needs to do. I feel like there's no real reason for him not to work in a recycle just to secure this game. And knowing the last two Pokemon from Edu, Wolfe is completely in the position he wants to be. The Tapu Koko was actually one of the Pokemon that was sacrificed in this instance for that Mudsdale to be bought. And we didn't see anything useful out of the Mudsdale there. We saw it close combat into a protect, but Wolfe read him like a book.
Tapu Fini on Wolfe's side of the field taking place of that Arcanine, as Arcanine on Eduardo's side tries to knock out that Snorlax with an extreme speed. No recycle from Wolfe, instead immediately going for the Frustration for the knockout on Tapu Fini. Wolfe knows his win condition right now, and it looks like having that Snorlax on the field may not be a part of it.
Yeah, all he needed to do was start taking knockouts, and Snorlax functioning fantastically under Trick Room. It's really important to see that come into play. It's so easy. The Trick Room obviously has ended now, But of course, Snorlax is still bulky enough to stick around, so many knockouts for Snorlax. It does finally faint, and we see Tapu Fini is actually the Pokemon remaining to face off against Arcanine for this turn.
Scald into that Arcanine. Will it be enough to knock it out, or will this game go for one more turn? Thanks to the choice specs, it is, and that Arcanine is knocked out. And Wolfe locks in his spot to the top cut here at the World Championships.
Yes, and a really fantastic run. You know, another 2-0 for Wolfe. That's something he was really kind of proud of for his record. He looks like he wants to go for the sportsman-like approach to the end of this game.
It's always great to see friends, you know, at the end of the day, even though there was so much on the line.